Super Saiyan. It's an iconic transformation that is recognizable all around the world, even by people who don't watch anime. The transformation multiplies your power by 50 times, which is an insane boost. Goku was getting completely outclassed by Frieza at 50% of the Space Tyrant's power, but with his first ever taste of Super Saiyan, Goku went from being unable to touch a 50% power Frieza to being able to throw down with and eventually beat a full power Frieza. So, what would happen if you went Super Saiyan? Yes, you, right there. The you right now with no additional training or power-ups. What if we 50x'd all of your abilities right now as they sit? What would you be capable of? Hey everybody, it's the Anime Trainer, and today we're gonna do our best to answer that question with science.
Science rules.
Or at least a fair amount of research, because I didn't do any real science testing stuff, so I can't really call it science per se. Before we get into that, go ahead and do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you're new. I have a goal to hit 20,000 subscribers by June, so every sub and share counts. Thank you so much in advance. Anyway, let's take a look at the average American male. The average American male is 5'9" and weighs 199 pounds and is untrained. I'm using this statistic mostly for ease of calculations and because the USA is where I live. So let's start with what the average American male is capable of in terms of feats of strength. We'll be looking at 5 different compound movements: the overhead press, the bench press, barbell squat, barbell deadlift, and the pull-up. This will allow us to gauge the overall strength in the whole body across various movement patterns and give us a general idea of what an average person gone Super Saiyan would be capable of. All of these numbers are pulled off exrx.net, which is a great website in general for learning about exercise and fitness. All right, we're gonna start with the overhead press. The overhead press, the average American male is capable of doing an 85-pound overhead press. If we 50 times that, that puts it at 4,250 pounds. Now, to put this in perspective, Eddie Hall, the 2019 World's Strongest Man, pressed 476 pounds overhead. That means that going Super Saiyan puts the average guy lifting 8.9 times the record of one of the strongest men in the world. That's insane. Let's take a look at the bench press. 135 pounds is what the average untrained American male can do. If we 50 times that, that's 6,750 pounds. Now, the heaviest raw bench press in the world was completed by Julius Maddox in February of 2021. That means that he completed that bench without a shirt, which is something that would help a competitor lift a little bit more weight and keep them safe during a lift, or a weight belt. And it was a staggering 783 pounds raw. Going Super Saiyan puts the average guy 8.6 times stronger in the bench press than the strongest raw lift. Let's take a look at the squat. It's 125 pounds for the average untrained American male. Now you might say, well, why is the squat less than the bench press? Most of that has to do with the fact that the average American male doesn't really work on the squat pattern as a movement, doesn't really have the mobility for it, and so they don't have that strength. However, if we multiplied that by 50 times, we end up with 6,250 pounds. Ray Orlando Williams squatted 1,080 pounds without knee wraps. He was wearing a squat suit and he did have a belt on, but he did not have knee wraps for his knees, which, if you know anything about squatting heavy, those knee wraps are great protection for those knees. Now, going Super Saiyan puts the average guy at 5.7 times this record. All right, let's take a look at the deadlift. 155 pounds is the average American male's capability in the deadlift. Now, the deadlift is kind of a difficult movement, but it is one of the movements that you can lift the heaviest amount of weight in, so it makes sense that it would be one of the heavier lifts that a person could do, even untrained. So 155 pounds times 50 puts you at 7,750 pounds. Now, Hafthor Bjornsson, the Mountain, pulled 501 kilograms or 1,104 pounds. Going Super Saiyan has the average guy lifting 7 times the heaviest deadlift of all time. So you go from being able to pull a small fraction of the heaviest deadlift of all time to eclipsing it 7 times. Now, for pull-ups, the average American male can do approximately 0 pull-ups. Absolutely 0. But strengthlevel.com places the untrained 200-pound male at doing a lat pull down of 104 pounds, which would theoretically put your max pull-up at 5,200 pounds if we went Super Saiyan, which would basically give you the ability to do pull-ups until you got bored, as your body weight would be just under 4% of your max, which is practically nothing. Hold your arm out with a 1 pound weight and curl it. See how many times you can curl it. You're probably gonna get bored before you get tired. Imagine that, going from no pull-ups to basically infinite pull-ups. It's just like that. David Marchante did a pull-up with 230.94 pounds and weighs 166 pounds, making a total weight pulled of 396.94 pounds. Going Super Saiyan would make the average guy roughly 13 times stronger in this lift. That's 13 times stronger than the heaviest added weight pull-up in the world. Now, that's not necessarily the heaviest pull-up in the world because there's guys that weigh 400 pounds that can do pull-ups, but it's the most weight added. So, what exactly could you lift with all of these things if you were the average American male? Well, the average car weight is 2,871 pounds. So just about 3,000 pounds is the average car. You could 100% lift the average car over your head if you were just some average dude who got a 50 times multiplier. But once we start talking about larger vehicles, they start to get out of reach pretty quickly. However, you could likely flip just about any size car or truck due to the nature of those vehicles' weight distribution. So you got under the side of it, you start lifting it, you lift one side up. As it starts to lift up and transfer the weight over, it flips pretty easily. So most cars you'd be able to lift, the average car you'd be able to lift overhead. Once you start getting a little heavier, you start being able to, you could just flip them, but you wouldn't be able to pick them up overhead. However, you couldn't lift a tractor trailer at all, because the average tractor trailer is approximately 35,000 pounds when it is empty and up to 80,000 pounds fully loaded. So absolutely not. You could not lift a tractor trailer. All right, let's talk about speed.
I feel the need for speed.
In the 100-meter distance, the top speed of the average guy is 8.3 miles an hour. So if you multiplied that by 50, you would theoretically get 415 miles an hour. Theoretically, if it worked that way. But it doesn't really work like that because of both the mechanics of human running, wind resistance, and, well, gravity. You see, running, particularly sprinting, is just a series of very calculated falls or short jumps, in the case of sprinting, in which the feet serve as a pivot point to continue the forward motion. The fastest sprinters put about 1,000 pounds of force per foot strike down on the ground, with the foot only making contact for about 1/10 of a second. Here's the funny thing though. No matter how fast a human being can run, the speed of their stride at top speed basically stays the same. The difference is the amount of power in each foot strike. Usain Bolt runs about 28 miles an hour. If we say that the average human runs at 8.3 miles an hour, then the foot strike force should be about 300 pounds per foot strike for the average human's top sprint speed. If we multiply that by 50 times, then that is 15,000 pounds per foot strike, which basically turns each foot strike into a massive jump. Instead of sprinting around like a speedster like Quicksilver or something like that, you would likely bound around like a smaller version of the Incredible Hulk, because obviously you don't weigh as much as the Hulk either, so you'd be able to jump a lot further. Now, if you got a little closer to the ground in something like a Naruto run, you might be able to do a quick few bursts in a small direction, but we're not going to be able to do sustained running close to the ground just because there's so much force being applied in each step. Now that takes us to jumping height. A 100 kilogram male jumping 0.306 meters generates 2,493.57 watts. 50 times that, and we end up with 124,678.5 watts. Now, using Sayer's formula, Sayer's equation estimates peak power output, we can reverse engineer our jumping height. And if we do that, we get a jump height of 2,013.24 centimeters, or 20.13 meters, or 66 feet. So that means that we go from the ability to jump 0.3 meters in the air, it's about a foot, going from that to being able to do 66 feet in the air. That's a huge amount of distance. So we're talking about being able to jump over most trees. All right, so we've covered strength, we've covered speed, and we've covered jumping height. But let's talk about something that you might not have considered, and that's toughness of your tissues or your durability. For the toughness of your skin, about 1 to 2 kilograms of force with a knife will pierce your skin. That's not very much force. We're talking about 110 to 220 or so pounds of force on a knife to penetrate your skin. Now, that allows you to probably be slash resistant, but a lot of piercing things are going to still be able to do damage on you. Now, let's talk about bullets. A 250 feet per second hollow point pierces the skin 50% of the time. But if we talk about a hollow point, it's not really about penetration power, it's about stopping power. Now, the average bullet with a hollow point, 250 feet per second, we end up with 22 joules. Now, 22 joules with a hollow point pierces the skin 50% of the time on a normal human being. That's actually very low. However, if we multiply that by 50 times, we get 1100 joules, meaning that the bullet is only imparting less than half of the energy required to pierce your skin 50% of the time. So at the very least, if you went Super Saiyan, you would at least be bullet resistant to small caliber weapons. Even going Super Saiyan wouldn't make you bulletproof, which is really quite astounding. Now, with a 22 caliber, which is at 40 grain and 1125 feet per second, the energy, like I said, is 152 joules. So it's conceivable you would still be able to stop one of those rounds. However, the shape of the bullet in that instance still might cause you some problems, since the above calculations were done with a hollow point in mind, not a penetrating round. Now, with the toughness of your muscles also being increased, it is possible that your muscle tissue could stop even more rounds from hitting your vital organs, but you would be hard-pressed to withstand anything that had any real power behind it. Now, if you're doubting what I'm saying, bodybuilder Sergio Oliva was shot several times with a small caliber weapon by his wife in the abdomen and survived because of his muscle tissue. So if a normal human being can build enough muscle tissue to protect themselves from a small caliber weapon, now mind you, he still had to go to the hospital, then certainly at 50 times, skin toughness and muscle toughness, you should be able to stop, some sort of round, even if you do end up having to go to the hospital over it. Now, for the hardness of bone, 4,000 newtons of force is required to break a femur when it comes in from the side. So if we multiplied that by 50, we end up with 200,000 newtons of force, which is nearly 45,000 pounds of force required to break a femur. Now, the femur is one of the strongest bones in the body, so there would be a lot less force required to break some of the smaller bones. But with that kind of resilience, you could basically shrug off a full power strike from a 20-pound sledgehammer, which is going to impart about a ton of force. You'd basically be able to take that most anywhere on the body. In terms of that, on most melee attacks, you would pretty much be able to shrug most melee attacks off entirely. Now, here's a big one. Let's talk about reaction time. 215 milliseconds is median reaction time for humans for visual stimulus. We're going to use this as our baseline. Theoretically, if you were supercharged 50 times, your reaction time would also increase. Now, unlike the speed situation, since much of the reaction time takes place internally, it would likely translate a lot more linearly than your running speed. That means that your reaction time would be 4.3 milliseconds or 0.0043 seconds. This increase in perception would create one of the largest benefits of the transformation, as your ability to process information would allow you to see the world in slow motion, allowing you to take advantage of all the other amped attributes that you possess, so that even though you're not bulletproof, with your improved speed and reaction time, you would likely have an easier time predicting the movements of your enemies, even if they had firearms, and have an increased chance of being able to avoid being shot in the first place. By the time someone is starting to move for their gun, you've already noticed, cleared the gap, so that the weapon doesn't even enter into the equation. And thanks to the Tooler drill, we know that inside of 20 to 21 feet, it's almost impossible for a person with a gun to avoid getting stabbed by a knife-wielding attacker before getting a shot off. So if you increase reaction time and speed 50 times, you are essentially ensuring that if a person is at a reasonable range to even aim at you with a small caliber weapon, that you could almost certainly get to and disable that person before they ever got the shot off to begin with. Taking a look at the increases here, it's easy to see why Super Saiyan is such a broken transformation, as it takes the average untrained guy and makes him 10 times stronger than the strongest men in the world, capable of resisting firearms, shrugging off basically any melee attack thrown from a human being, and with speed and reaction times so monumentally amped up, it might seem like precognition to someone that's actually fighting that person. The Super Soldier Serum from Captain America doesn't even hold a candle to that. And that's not even considering that there are higher levels of Super Saiyan. This is Super Saiyan 1. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It was a lot of fun to make. Let me know if you'd like me to do higher Super Saiyan forms as later videos, and let me know in the comments what you could personally do if you 50 times yourself, because I don't know your stats. You know your stats, let me know. And an extra special thanks to our YouTube members and our Patreon subscribers. You guys help make content just like this, and those links are in the description if you'd like to support us. That's all for today, guys. I'm the Anime Trainer, and until next time, good luck and train hard.